So you want a bigger deadlift. You and every other lifter on the planet. But if all you're doing is straight deadlifts from the floor, you might be leaving some gains on the table. So what I'm gonna do is take you through 5 of my favorite accessory movements, slight variations on the deadlift that could help you target your weak points, fix patterns that maybe are holding you back, and build some more muscle so you can have a massive deadlift. The deadlift is a pretty complex sum of a whole bunch of little parts, right? We've got our grip strength, we've got our leg strength, back strength, timing, positioning, all that stuff rolled into one. If your deadlift is stalling, there's a decent chance one or some of those components is falling behind. Choosing the right accessory movement can help you emphasize different aspects of the deadlift, fix technique, bring up legging muscle groups, and overall just build a big old deadlift.
To be alive if you can't do deadlift.
Accessory lift 1, deficit deadlifts. First up, deficit deadlifts. Now, these can be pretty brutal, and honestly, I'd only recommend them for conventional deadlifters, not as a sumo accessory. But by extending the range of motion and putting yourself up on a 1 to 2 inch block, you can really build a lot of strength in the first few inches of the lift and teach yourself to be patient and stay tight while you're breaking the bar off the floor. I wouldn't go any bigger than a maybe 2-3 inch deficit at most. And I also wouldn't go down to an inch or a ½ inch deficit because I think that's just gonna mess with your usual pattern. We want this to be distinct enough that it actually trains something differently. Quick tip for your deficit deadlift. You're either going to have to pull with your hips a fair bit higher than you normally would in your competition lift, or pull with your hips a lot lower than you would in your competition lift. If you're a lifter whose hips tend to shoot up when you start your comp deadlift, definitely get those hips down, work on emphasizing that patience and keeping the hips low as you start. If you're not a lifter who has that issue, just go with the higher hip wedge and you'll be fine. Accessory lift number 2, accommodating resistance. Number 2, deadlift versus bands or chains. Often people will turn to block pulls to try to strengthen the top end of their deadlift, but that cuts out the entire bottom of the range of motion, and I don't think it works very well. Using accommodating resistance allows you to hit the top end of your lift harder without losing the rest of the movement or changing your start position. If you're having a tough time with lockout, bands or chains will both hammer the lockout to make it stronger and help you maintain position off the floor by punishing you for losing that position. All right, so not every gym is gonna have access to bands and chains, but if you do, here's how to set them up quick and how much to use. First, let's talk about bands. If you have dumbbells, set one in front of the platform, one behind the platform. Maybe toss some fat grips on there if there's knurling to protect the band. Just loop it around underneath the dumbbell, obviously, across and back, boom. If you don't have dumbbells and all you have is a band, you can drape it over the bar like so, stand on it, and then let it rip. If you're pulling sumo, you can do the same thing. Set it in a little narrower. You'll have to stretch the band out a little, maybe just straight up and down like so, and then you can pull sumo against bands like that. For chains, if you're pulling sumo, just drape them right over the middle of the bar. What I like to do, it's weird, but I like to get a dishcloth and set it over the center knurling so the chains don't muck up the bar. If you're pulling conventional, that's not gonna work. So you'll need to put the chains on the outside. Try to put them as far out this way as possible so the bar doesn't land on them. Quick tip there. And how much to use? Well, go buy yourself a fish scale off of Amazon for $9. You can use this, hold it at the top about where lockout's gonna be to measure the resistance you're getting from either the chains or the bands, and use anywhere from 10 to 20% of your 1 rep max on the deadlift. Third, the Romanian deadlift. There's a reason bodybuilders use these to beat the piss out of their hamstring. They're really good at targeting the posterior chain, hamstrings, glutes, spinal erectors, but the flip side is that you're also gonna get way better at hinging. And the hinge pattern is super central to the deadlift and to the squat to some extent. Building stronger hamstrings and perfecting your hinge in the deadlift is super important because that's gonna allow you to really be in the position you wanna be in once that bar comes past the knees, and also it's gonna strengthen your lockout. Okay, so the first thing I wanna do here is differentiate the Romanian deadlift from the stiff-legged deadlift. A Romanian deadlift is gonna start from the top. It starts with the eccentric or lowering phase. You're gonna go down just past the knees and come back up. That's 1 rep. Picking the bar up doesn't count as a rep. A stiff leg deadlift, you're gonna start from a dead stop every time. You're gonna go all the way to the floor. You're gonna keep your hips much, much higher with less knee bend. This is your start position for a stiff leg. When you're doing a Romanian deadlift, you wanna try to find a good balance between pressure on your heels so we can feel a lot of good hamstring stretch and tension, and allowing the knees to come forwards enough that by the time the bar gets to the bottom, we are getting a little bit of that quad feeling and a little bit of that push to start the lift. That way it's gonna carry over better into your deadlift and help with that transition in the competition lift itself. Number 4, one of my personal favorites, the pause deadlift. These are incredibly effective at teaching positional awareness and control, especially if you tend to rush your pull or if you have troubles with the start of the lift or start position. So I typically recommend these are done 2 different ways, one for sumo, one for conventional. In the sumo deadlift, we want to pause within an inch of breaking the bar off the floor. Very, very bottom end of the range of motion. That's because generally in sumo, this is either where we lose position or it's the toughest part of the lift. For conventional, however, I generally recommend lifters pause a little higher, usually just below the knee, because that's where lifters struggle again with that transition between the push at the start of the pull and the pull at the end of the deadlift. A couple practical tips for the pause deadlift. Number 1, it should feel like a push off the floor, and it should feel like a push out of the pause. We want to feel like in this movement, we're starting the lift twice. It's going to emphasize that bottom position. It's going to get you stronger off the floor. Another tip, pause it. Don't just start slow. Don't just like hiccup during the movement. Pause it, hold it for a solid 2 count, and then finish the movement. If you have to put a caption on it for somebody to recognize that you paused it, you didn't pause it. Lastly, don't take advantage of position during the pause. I see a lot of sumo lifters in particular lift the bar off the floor, then during their pause, they'll wedge their hips in harder and get more upright. So coming out of the pause, they're in a totally different position. And they're actually then advantaged out of that position. No. We want you to pause in the position you're gonna be in, come out of the position you're gonna be in. We want this to be transferable to your competition deadlift. Exercise number 5, the front squat. Yes, the front squat. Last but not least, the front squat. Now, a lot of people might think, hey, that's a squat. Isn't that better for the squat? No, I don't think so. Especially if you're an even moderately trained powerlifter. Chances are the limiting thing in your front squat that's gonna keep you from putting more weight on the bar is gonna be your ability for your trunk and your upper back to stabilize the weight, not your ability for the legs to push the weight. Most trained powerlifters are not gonna get enough leg push, squat stimulus out of a front squat for it to be any good for the squat itself. So I challenge you that this is in fact a better movement for the deadlift. That weight is in front of you, it's pulling you forward, you're working to stabilize yourself through your trunk and your core in an upright fashion, and you're using your legs, hinging, pushing while doing it. If you're anything like me, and maybe you've been powerlifting for like 14 years, and your shoulders are a giant mess, and you can't get into a good position to front squat, well, you can do as I do. Just take some straps, slap them onto the bar, tighten them up, and that gives you something to hold on to so you can get the bar into position and do some front squats. Now, yeah, it's gonna choke you out. That's just front squats. You wanna get the weight behind your delt, which if you have delts is gonna drive it into your esophagus. It's not a comfortable movement. If you can find a bar with no center knurling, that's a bonus. But if not, just, yeah, you get a little shave, a little cheese grater effect in there. It'll be all right. And in terms of holding the bar and holding that rack position, we want to try to get external rotation. We want to drive those elbows up and in because that's going to help lock those shoulder blades into position, keep that chest nice and high so you can stabilize the weight while you try to squat it. Here's the thing. You do not need to throw all 5 of these movements into your program at once. That is not how this is going to work. Accessories need to be intelligently and intentionally applied in order to do their job. Start off with 1 or 2 of these, put them in your program, and then assess your deadlift progress block by block. Now let's look at a couple of quick examples as to maybe the issue with your deadlift and how you would incorporate some of these movements. If you're struggling off the floor, I would try the deficit deadlift or the pause deadlift. If you're struggling at lockout, deadlifting versus bands and chains is great for that. I'd also recommend pause deadlifts here because you might be losing position off the floor. That might be why the lockout is tough. And also, I would recommend RDLs because the practice in timing the hinge to the lockout is really important. The last sort of instance or issue with deadlifts would be that we're losing a lot of position off the floor, right? We're not able to hold that position we brace to when we start lifting. In that instance, kind of all of these will be applicable. Bands and chains are gonna punish you for losing position. Therefore, you're gonna have that feedback of knowing whether you maintained it or not. Pause deadlifts, very similarly, gonna make starting the pull and holding position tough. RDLs, really good for just kind of generally strengthening everything. And this is also where front squats would come in. If we're losing position, if we don't have the back and trunk strength to maintain our brace. In terms of how you might program these accessories, I would honestly probably pick 1 of these, maybe 2 if the second one is RDL. I would do that movement likely on its own day, separate from your deadlift day, depending on your split. I would do anywhere from 2 to 4 sets. I would keep things in the rep range of 3 to 6. And I would intentionally try to make this day a little bit lighter and a little more focused on the execution, on the skill, on the je ne sais quoi.
I love it. I love it.
There may be some of you who need a little bit more intensity on that secondary day, but these are just general programming tips. So, see how it works. Like I said, assess block to block based on how your competition deadlift progresses while doing these on a secondary day or later on the deadlift day. If you want more structured and detailed programming that will guide you on exactly how to build your deadlift, then you should check out the Calgary Barbell training app. It's linked below. It's backed by real world results, and we have programs ranging all the way from beginner to intermediate to advanced. We'll do form checks, all that kind of stuff. It's very hands-on. If you've got a deadlift accessory that has worked for you, maybe broken through a plateau or helped you gain strength or size, go ahead and drop it in the comments below. Like, subscribe. We'll see you all in the next one.